on today the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, where he breaks the idols and he leaves the big one okay. And what's mentioned, when they came back, they said, "Man fa'ala hadha bi alihatina innahu lamin al-zalimin." Whoever did this with our idols, he's one of the wrongdoers. Okay, that's really like the Ibrahim alayhi salam. The very hard part, he's putting them in a very specific position so that they can see the fallacy in how they think. So what does he tell? So what do they say? So first, they came and they see that everything's broken except the big one, the axe is there, whatever tool used. So what do they say? Who did this with our gods? He is from the oppressors, from the wrongdoers. What do they say? Sami'na fatay yadhkuru yuqalu Ibrahim. We've heard about a young boy, young man. His name is Ibrahim. So I said, okay, bring him. Bring him from the people so that they can see, they can testify. So they call him and they say, what? Ibrahim, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. They said, did you do this to our gods? And Ibrahim alayhi salam responded with what? Actually, the big idol did it. The honcho idol, right? The leader of all the idols, I guess. He says, he did it. Why don't you go ahead and ask it if they can speak? Ask them if they can speak. So they went to themselves. They turned to one another and they said, okay. They said, okay, you yourselves are the wrongdoers. Then hanging their heads, they reversed their position. What did they say? He said, you already, in reply to Ibrahim, you already know that they don't speak. Subhanallah. You already know that they don't speak. So he said then, do you worship other than Allah, that which does not give you benefit, right? And it does not harm you. It's like shame on you. And that which you worship. Do you not understand? So what was their response? The response is like, let's burn. Burn him and aid your gods in kuntum fa'ilin, if you are to take action. And then Allah says, then Allah made the fire cold for Ibrahim. But here's something really, really interesting. Ibrahim alayhi salam put them in a position where they had to acknowledge the fallacy of how they used to think about their gods. Because he posed the question, what did they say? They said, who did it? He said the big one did it. Now either they had two options. Either they accept that the idols get up and move and dance when everyone's gone, right? And they're fighting each other, right? They have WWE matches when no one's around. Or they have to acknowledge that the idols literally cannot do anything. And that someone else did. So it seems like a very simple story, but it's actually a very powerful thing that he did. Because he forced them to look at their ignorance. And then at that point they had a choice. Do they stay in that ignorance? Or do they punish the person that's trying to get them out of that ignorance? And they chose the latter. They chose to try to throw him in the fire. So Ibrahim alayhi salam's story is a very strong story about Tawheed, about staying true to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because even the other ones, and we read it before, when he's looking at the sun, he's looking at the moon, he's observing them, trying to find out, are these my gods? And then they descend, and then they're gone, and then he's like, no, my Lord cannot just be. They're temporary. My Lord also has to be there all the time. So the whole story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, it all comes around to the oneness of Allah, preaching the oneness of Allah. Him innately having that feeling, preaching that, and also defending it as well. Right? So in all these different ways. But this thing that he did is a very powerful thing. So whenever we explain it, we always remind people that Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he posed the ignorance in front of their faces. And they had a choice at that moment to acknowledge it and they actually acknowledged it. Because they said what? Because what are they saying essentially? No, if somebody had to do this, essentially saying what? The gods are what? They're not capable of even defending themselves. Right? So he's trying to get them to think that if they're not able to defend themselves, then how can they be worthy of worship? So that's inshallah, that's enough for today, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.